Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 135. I'm your host, Barney Smith of storycomic.com. And with us is the highly acclaimed and celebrated comic creator of Sunrise Blossom, Nina Aberlein.
And Ebony.
And Ebony is right there too. And which is now live on Kickstarter right now with your and congratulations, you've already hit your goal.
In 2 hours. It was awesome. And we've become a project we love on Kickstarter. And it's like...
And so this was your first time using Kickstarter, because previously, Volume 1, you used Indiegogo. Yeah. And so kind of give people, and I know that you've, it's been really exciting watching for those who are interested, just Google Nina's name. She's been having a lot of great interviews with a lot of other shows, and it's been amazing just to kind of like follow you, watching how your progression of your Kickstarter has been going by watching the timeline of your interviews. It's been really fun watching that happen. For those folks that are kind of interested in kind of learning more about Sunrise Blossom, it's amazing when people say, wow, you know what, this story kind of reminds me of this, reminds me of this. This story doesn't remind me of anything. Like this, for me, it truly feels like it's an original thing where it's about a harpy who is raised by owls, who then decides to kind of take an adventure. And then did she get hit by the car before the owls or after the owls to get raised?
Before the owls.
That's right. Okay, right. So, yeah, so it's fun. Like, and as you said before, listen, if you are a fan of harpies, if you're a fan of birds, if you're a fan of like a manga-inspired stories, this is going to be the perfect story for you. You can get right now. Yes. And so you can buy volume 1 is also part of your Kickstarter, and which is around 200 plus pages, correct?
Yeah, the first volume is 223 pages.
Wow, that's amazing. And then volume 2, which is coming out here that people can have, is a colorized version, which is at 53 pages. So I kind of explained it, but I want to see it maybe from your point of view to talk about what Sunrise Blossom is and what people can expect from the story.
So, as you mentioned, if you like big birds, if you like drama, and if you like girls kissing, then Sunrise Blossom is definitely the type of content you might enjoy. So Sunrise Blossom is a coming-of-age story that focuses on Ivy, a young falcon harpy abandoned...
Oh, I think your cat unplugged your mic again.
Oh, it was the cat again. Sorry, she's a bit active. She keeps bumping into my cables. So, while traveling with her sister to learn about human culture, Ivy has an argument with her and they are separated until she is picked up by a human woman, Violet, who helps her discover herself and bloom into womanhood. But it's only after a dramatic turn of events that Ivy discovers... very dramatic, by the way, no spoilers, but it's very dramatic. Only after that incredibly dramatic and traumatic, sadly, turn of events, Ivy discovers her romantic feelings for her human companion. And after the dramatic ending of Volume 1, Ivy spends some time with a kind, old, fatherly man. But when his real daughter shows up, it's time for Ivy to return to her love interest.
And you had... And so looking at this, I wanted to kind of talk to you a bit about, and I want to get into first also just afters to kind of get into the Kickstarter and what your different tiers that you have. But I wanted to kind of first talk to you about, just from the comic creator perspective, what's your process? Like, I love the style on here. I love how you kind of overlap. Almost it looks as though it's like like some found backgrounds along with on top of some different patterns and whatnot. Are you a pen and pencil on paper person? Is it all digital? Is it a little bit of both? How does that work?
The comic itself is exclusively done in digital.
Okay.
However, the scripting and the storyboard process I always do on paper. Like I've got a little notebook for it, in which let's see if I got an example here. I write the script
Okay.
in pencil, and then I do the storyboards in pencil. Mostly because doing this on paper, because it's the most, like thought-wrenching process of creation. Doing it on paper like helps me think better and put my thoughts down better. And then whenever I get to the actual creation part of the process, when I get on. And so when I get to the computer and I open my drawing program, pretty much like I turn my brain off, and like I'm able to do everything kind of like, I can like listen to podcasts, chat with people, and like do everything with like pretty much with my brain turned off, because the scripting and the storyboarding, like the phase in which I pick the panel shot, the point of view, where there's like a head shot, full body, knee shot from behind, and all the different composition stuff, and the lettering and stuff. I choose all of that in the storyboards.
Right.
So then normally, because my comic, before being a printed comic, it's always a webtoon comic. And so also when it comes to the type, so the creation and the process of the comic, it's a lot more similar to webtoon comics than most printed comics. So like, for example, for the backgrounds, I mostly use 3D assets.
Okay.
Or sometimes I like, for example, I recycle panels, maybe with a zoom in or a small change here and there, because the creation process is a lot faster that way. It's a lot of like little tidbits here and there to like make a story effective, but like faster to produce, because on webtoons, sadly, often enough, it's a matter of quantity over quality.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that the quality is bad at all, but because also of the type of competition that there is on that platform, often it's important to be able to give out as much as possible, as quickly as possible also. And so like, for example, here, for the backgrounds mostly, I use 3D assets, but I don't like just use the crude, like 3D background or whatever. I always photo manipulate it, draw on top of it, add all the necessary details, and it's mostly something to change time.
Right.
Like I have studied perspective, I know how perspective works, which is also why I'm able to make the characters fit normally when I can into the certain perspectives. And so like after doing the storyboards, often enough, like the first thing that I do is that I prepare the background files, then I move over to Clip Studio Paint. I sketch on top of those.
Okay.
I let the sketch rest for a day or two normally. And this is super important for absolutely anyone, to always let the sketch rest.
Wow,
so that the
okay.
next day, like you can look at it with fresh eyes. And if there are any mistakes that you didn't notice before, then you can fix them. And then I do the line art, coloring, rendering, and then I move on to the next page.
Okay. That was going to be my next question: to use Clip Studio Paint or Procreate or Photoshop? So you're pretty
Clip
much
Studio Paint
Clip Studio
all
Paint
the way. Yes.
It's just other artists I've talked to, they're just really there's no indifference about it. Like I've never met anybody who said Clip Studio Paint is like, yeah, it's fine, I'll just do it, but I'll do anything. But they'll be like, yeah, Clip Studio Paint, do not use anything else.
It's got like everything you would ever need from a drawing program, and like it's also like pretty damn cheap compared, considering everything it's got. Like the full version of the regular Clip Studio Paint, which is the Clip Studio Paint Pro, is normally something like $40.
Right.
But they've got like discounts all the time, and on desktop it's a one-time subscription.
Oh, wow.
So like I bought my Clip Studio Paint for like $20 4 years ago, And with that, I also get like all the updates for free, and I haven't spent a single cent on it since. And it's the best drawing program I've ever had because, aside from the amazing tools, comic creation tools, the amazing lettering tools, it has the balloons, speech balloon, the text words, sorry, balloons tools, the assets, the extra assets that it has, the asset store, which is like which is open source. It's
Right.
got pretty much everything. You can even freaking animate on the thing, and
Really?
yeah, and it's also got like a 3D modeling. It's got everything, and it's the best by
And
far.
so and so when you do that, are you using like a tablet feature, like a Wacom type thing, or are you using mouse, or what do you use
I've
for it?
got my Cintiq tablet,
Oh, okay. All right.
which I slaved an entire summer for, and it was worth it. I literally spent an entire summer just for that goddamn thing, and it was
Right.
worth it.
Do you have when you sit down and you kind of draw, how long does it take? As you kind of mentioned, is that it's there's a point where you kind of have to, keep the production level going. Is how quickly do you from like a physical page, so like a how the webtoon works, like a pages work, how much of a buffer do you have, and how much does it take to you to how long does it take to make a page for you now?
Well, normally when I storyboard in traditional format,
Okay.
like a regular comic page,
Yeah.
mostly because that way when I prepare the comic for print, then I've already got the storyboards, and when I do the comic itself in the webtoon format, I just keep the shapes of the panels in like roughly the same kind of ratio as in the storyboard, so that it's easier to
Okay.
put them together afterwards. And normally, on average, a page with maybe 4 or 5 panels, it might take me somewhere between 3 and 8 hours, I
Wow.
think.
Okay.
And I normally do maybe maybe even 3 pages. Yeah, roughly around 2 pages a week on average, considering, also the day job and stuff like that. And I do it like when I can in
Right.
my extra time. So on average, maybe two, sometimes three or more, depending on the period. Maybe I'm on vacation, I've got nothing to do, so I can produce more. So on average, maybe 2 or 3 pages a week.
That's right, because you're a teacher as your day job, correct? Yeah. And how do you? So I guess the other question is that people are be watching or listening. It's like, hey, Nina, this is great. You know what? I got a day job too. I don't have the time. How do you able to find the time? Give me some tips. How do I take the time to make sure that I can uh, produce work as well?
Well, when I started the job that I have now, I made it very clear to my employer that I would not be able to work more than part time,
Hmm.
because being able to balance both comic work and regular day work for me was very important. So technically, I'm working part time with two different schools, so I'm almost working full time technically, and I still struggle to make ends meet, but that's okay. That's okay. But aside from making my boundaries very clear
Hmm.
with my employer, and also making it very clear from before I signed the contract, like saying, hey, it's okay for me to work on Saturdays, but do know that sometimes I have conventions and those are on the weekends and I can't come on Saturday those days.
Right.
And the employer was like, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
That's all right. It says just every once in a while, that's okay. So making boundaries with my employer very clear was a very important first step for me, and it was awesome because my boss is like very fond of my comics as well. So that's good. Then it's mostly a matter of managing schedule, pretty much. Like I keep in mind, like deadlines that I have, and I try to fit in as much as I can and produce whenever I'm not working or unless I'm dead tired. And normally, regarding buffer, at least like on the webtoons where I publish roughly every 2 weeks or so, buffer wise, I try to keep around 4 episodes of buffer,
Okay.
which roughly translates to maybe 25 pages or so.
Wow. Okay.
And one episode maybe contains between 15 and 20 panels, so 2-3 pages. Sorry, 3 or 4 pages, sometimes
Okay.
5 or 6, depending on the amount of panels in each page.
Because you take what you do for the webtoons and you kind of turn it into, you have the physical copies. Do you feel constraint, or you enjoy the creativity of fitting in your physical book into those quote unquote chapters as you set them up, episodes as you set them up through
Well,
webtoons?
it was a little bit difficult at first, mostly because I wasn't used to it. But because I do my storyboards in traditional format, it's a lot easier for me to format the webtoon version into the print. And so then, like I normally do the pages themselves in the vertical webtoon format, and I keep the panel sizes and ratio roughly the same as in the storyboards, so that later when I am preparing them for the printed version, it's mostly like copy paste into the new panels and maybe reshape them a little bit if necessary. And it's not very time consuming. Like formatting the 53 pages for volume 2 maybe took me 16 hours.
Wow. Okay.
While formatting volume 1 took so long. And it was so exhausting. And then I had to translate it to Italian, and it was so exhausting. But it's done, and I'm so happy that I'm finally over with that. And this one is already all formatted and all translated. So as soon as the campaign ends and as soon as the funds reach my bank account, I'll be able to send them to print and ship them immediately.
So with that point of the translation piece, as you mentioned, I was curious to ask you, we have, a lot of my friends who would say, hey, listen, if you're going to watch anime, watch subtitled, because you're watching the dubbed, you lose something in the translation. At least subtitled, it's the closest you have that. So I guess my question for you is the same when it comes to comic books. When you translate it into Italian, is there some compromise that happens with the story or the script, or do you feel that you're able to have a pretty good, clear translation between both?
Well, story-wise, nothing really changed at all.
Okay.
The translation itself was pretty faithful, and like nothing. There were no big changes at all. The biggest change, which was a little bit sad, at least for me to do, was that I had to delete an Easter egg in Italian translation because it was an Easter egg that didn't quite translate.
Okay.
Because in her owl family, the main character, Ivy, has a little family nickname, and her mother calls her Blossom. Her little sister, her owl sister, their mother and their family calls her Boobles, similar to Bubbles. And their youngest brother is called Buttercup.
Okay.
So you've got Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup. And so you've got the Powerpuff Girls.
Right, yeah.
But that's something that I couldn't really translate in Italian because they've got completely different names in the Italian version of the Powerpuff Girls. So something that I couldn't really translate. But aside from that, is pretty faithful.
Okay. So my next question, I'm really curious to ask you about the world building aspects of this.
Please don't ask me about their cloaca.
Do you? So when you kind of because if I remember correctly, you said in a previous interview that the idea behind this was a class project you had about a harpy getting hit by a car and did you? And then you kind of said, listen, I want to write more about this after this class project's over. I really like this story. I like this idea. did you kind of create from like a world building perspective? Is this, it takes place in a our world, or is it a kind of like a parallel world, or how did you kind of create the environment and the actual the setting of your comic?
Well, there was a lot of work involved, but I didn't want to be the kind of creator that spends like 10 years working on world building and then like create 3 pages of the comic and be like, oh, my comic's awesome because I've been working on it for 10 years. And I've seen that happen so often. Just because you've been brainstorming the world building for 10 years doesn't mean the comic itself is 10 years old. You've only got 3 pages out. But I didn't want it to be that. But I did think about the world building a lot. But I didn't want to like info dump the world
Right.
building. So even in the comic itself, it's mostly something that is revealed little by little through, small nuances present in the story. Small tidbits, small mentions of their culture, how they are grown, and like small things like that, and also like there is like an introduction, a brief introduction chapter that presents the world a little bit, but I did not want to info dump at all. And even like in the second volume, we learn even more about the world. And in the third volume, which I've been working on the past couple of days, we'll be learning even more. And it's that gradual understanding of the world that it feels a little bit more natural, because the world in which it takes place is very similar to ours, pretty much. So it's similar to a parallel universe. But because the existence of these half-animal creatures is not really known to the general public, it may as well even be our world kind of storytelling, kind of setting. Sorry, and sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, the world building is introduced gradually, and so if you're more interested, everyone feel free to ask questions, as long as you don't ask questions about why bird people have memories. I can't answer that. But yeah.
Though, I mean, the harpies, yeah, I mean, harpies have memories, so, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but they're birds. Like, do
Right.
they feed their babies milk or do they barf in their mouths? I don't know. Stop
Right.
asking.
So I'm also kind of curious too, is like what I loved about it when your pre-launch stuff was probably some of the best that I've seen.
Oh,
Like,
thank
it was
you.
so fun to watch. Your memes were hilarious.
Yeah, I've actually posted some of the best ones at the bottom of my Kickstarter page.
So, I mean, it was so fun to watch you post these memes that were reminiscent, or just like, inspired by inspired by your just standard memes that you would see around here. So I wanted to get to where are they? You said near the bottom of the page. So please, right here. Here's one, your meme gallery here. The car going off. I like this one. Funny. Yeah. Yeah. This is, that's so funny. Yeah.
Well, that one was actually based on a true story, but I won't get into it much because it makes my blood boil.
I know. I remember you said it was. I think it was the Indie Vault. Comic.
Yeah, I mentioned it on Indie Vault. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been. Yeah, it's so funny. I love the memes that you did that were kind of like that were like
thank
that.
you.
It was fun. So let's talk a bit about too. Is just what can people expect on your on your tier levels?
Okay.
So you got your start. You got your basic. Your digital PDF for €5, which is a great deal. I mean, if you do the 53 pages, that's an amazing deal right there that people can get.
Thank you.
And then plus two, you got your volume. Then you got your 10-euro pledge with volume 1 and 2 digital PDF, which again, as we said earlier, 226 pages on volume 1.
Yeah, volume 1 plus volume 2, it's almost 300 pages.
Yeah, for 10 euros. That's graphic novel. That's a really good deal on that. And you had on here, and I love that you kind of split it up for people who are the who might be a currency challenged on
Yeah, and
understanding
it's an estimate of the currency exchange. So it might be a few cents more, it might be a few cents less, but it's an estimate.
Right. So when it came down to, I wanted to ask you this too, with the issues of shipping that people are seeing and printing. Were you able to kind of balance out about what your expectations were on the cost of printing because of the shipping challenges?
Well, luckily, I didn't really have any shipping challenges because, so even if you are in the US and you are buying in the US, the shipping is much less than the actual books themselves.
Wow.
Because I am shipping to the US at least, I am shipping through Critical Blast.
Okay.
So pretty much what I'm doing is that I am sending all the copies that were purchased from the US to him with a list of the backers and their addresses and what they ordered. And then he, from his house, ships them individually in the United States.
That's a
And
great
so that
idea.
way, the entire shipping process is not only safer, because it can actually be tracked a lot
Right.
easier. It is also faster because it only goes through customs once. And it is a lot cheaper because shipping one package to the US and then from the US shipping them all individually is a lot cheaper than me sending them all to the US individually.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And I did that for volume 1 and it was wonderful.
Wow. And so you're doing that to the US, but like say like Canada, are they shipping it from the US to
No,
Canada?
through the Canada, no.
No.
But even to Canada, the shipping isn't that much more expensive.
Okay.
So to the US, shipping is, and I think I've gotten it written somewhere here. To the US, shipping is 13 euros, which is roughly $14.50.
Right.
Shipping to the United Kingdom is also 13 euros, which is roughly £10.50. Shipping to the rest of the European Union is 10 euros, Italy 2 euros. And shipping to the rest of the world, and this is for the basic tiers, so not for like the 10 volume super heavy tiers. Shipping to the rest of the world is 20 euros. So considering that volume 1 plus 2 is 35 euros, or if you want to get like the deluxe tier, which also has like all the prints and bookmarks and stuff, it's still like a lot cheaper than the books themselves, which is good.
Right. And so basically it was the same kind of deal what you did with your 35 euro side pledge with like the volume 1 and 2, same thing, you're shipping them all straight to US for okay. All right. So the other cool thing about this too, when you look at this, it says 7 backers on your volume 1 and volume 2. That means you have 7 new readers.
Minimum, because there's also people who got the deluxe
digital
package,
the deluxe
which
package
has
too.
like the volume 1, volume 2, all the prints and the bookmark.
Okay. All right.
And those are all new. And
Okay.
of course, even if you're not new and you want, the extra prints and volume 2, they're all available. All the extra stuff is available as add-ons.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and then you, like you said, you have the deluxe package, which actually comes with prints, cover prints, a wedding, Halloween print, bookmarks, summer fun print, and I think we saw those above.
Yeah,
correct?
those are up above.
Right. Yeah. Right up here too. That's really, you've reached your second or first
stretch goal so far.
Okay.
I am halfway to the second because it's currently 225% backed, funded, if I remember correctly. Let me open it real quick. Yeah, and it was like right before this, it was something like 225% back. So it's
Wow.
doing pretty good.
And this is right here, the volume, your retail tier for 100 euros, you get 10 copies.
Which is roughly a 30% discount on what it would be compared to getting 10 copies individually. So instead of, like, for the second volume, instead of paying 150 euros for 10 copies, it would be 100.
Right.
And I think it's a similar discount for the retail tier for volume 1 plus volume 2.
Right. Because right here, if you're looking at it, it's about $260 or so if you get the volume 1, volume 2 retail tier for 10 copies. So that equals out to volume 1 and volume 2 wholesale is about $26. Compare that to if you're going to buy them straight out on yourself, it's going to be $40. So it is, yeah, you're saving. It's like basically it's cut off by about a third. Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. I mean, as I say, congratulations on hitting that goal so far.
Thank you.
It's how was it like? And I know that you said it before. Your first volume 1 was Indiegogo. You decided to do volume 2. It's a little bit different, and the challenge that you saw with Indiegogo is that some people tried to pay, and they couldn't. It wasn't working.
And because their cards were declined so many times, they just lost interest.
Right. Now, what were some... So we know why, just listening, so we know why you decided to do Kickstarter instead of Indiegogo. So my question for you is, when you did volume 1, why did you decide to do Indiegogo first and not Kickstarter?
Because, well, I think it was mostly because my friend Mike, that we saw at the beginning, who had more crowdfunding experience than I did, especially at the time, kind of coached me through the process, because I had absolutely zero experience crowdfunding. And he kind of like threw me a net and brought me into his own network, of like the crowdfunding people. And so like with the first volume, like the first shows that I did, online cons and things like that, were mostly thanks to him. And because he was also more familiar with Indiegogo, and I didn't want to stray, because it was my very first time, I wanted to do something that was a little bit more familiar. And so I went with Indiegogo the first time. Also because a couple years prior, when I was in comic school, and this was maybe 3-4 years ago at this point, our marketing teacher said that at the time, Indiegogo was a little bit better for crowdfunding comics because Kickstarter had a bigger focus on, like tech stuff and developing new tools, and didn't have as much of a focus on comics compared to Indiegogo. And so because it felt a little bit safer, especially for our first experience.
Oh, okay. All right.
But there were...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
But there were a few things that Indiegogo had that I loved that Kickstarter doesn't have. First of all, the pre-launch page, because with Indiegogo, on the pre-launch page, you could share the trailer, you could share promotional images, you could share lots of text so people know what to expect. With Kickstarter, you've got an image, and that's it. It's like, how can I get people to subscribe to this if they don't even know what to expect? Which is like the whole reason, which actually might even have been good, because it's the whole reason why I started doing promotional memes and stuff like that. So like, if you like this meme, this is the pre-launch page. Go check it out.
And so did you have, when you, how did you kind of build up that from that marketing piece to that? Like how much of a challenge, or how much did you enjoy kind of building up the hype pre-Kickstarter?
I mean, I was already rather used to like marketing and networking, because it's also important also with the webcomic on the Webtoons platform to market, advertise it, promote it in places. And so I was already like a bit familiar with how to do it. But with the crowdfunding campaign, like I had to be a lot more aggressive with it, I guess. And like even now, these days, like while the campaign is active, I'm doing this sort of like social media campaign where like every day, like every new day on the campaign, I share one page of the comic. So like day one, page one, currently like, I don't know, 100% funded. And so like I put that like on one of the pages, and like at the bottom I put like the Kickstarter logo, my comics logo, and then like I share that on Instagram stories, Instagram post, various subreddits, Twitter, my Facebook page, my personal Facebook, a million, like at least 50 different Facebook groups.
Right.
And like I do that like every single day. And it's also like there's a lot of trial and error that went through that. Like with the first campaign, like when promoting the campaign itself, I tried doing like little promotional sketches, you know, some artwork with the two main characters because I thought, yeah, maybe people will like that. Big mistake. Because it was like a lot of work for considerably little payout. But I'm really like the things that I'm doing now where every day I share like a new page of the comic because like people, and I've seen this across various platforms, people show a little bit of interest, and then because I share it on the same platforms, if they see the next page the day after, they're a little bit more intrigued, and if they see another page, you know, in the same group the day after that, it's like, oh, this is interesting. And I've seen several, I've had several different people be like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Like, where is the link? Even though the link is in the post, but never mind. and it's like considerably, like a lot less effort than like drawing a new piece of art, and it's like showing the people what they get.
And you're always going to invariably have the people who will say after it's over, like, oh, I wish I knew about this.
Well, for that, no problem, because even though Kickstarter does not have an in-demand store the same way Indiegogo has, it's okay. Because I am setting up an Etsy by the time the Kickstarter is over. So like before all the orders are fulfilled, if the Kickstarter is over, people can buy it over from Etsy.
Oh,
the only thing would be that after like the first batch like to the United States is sent, shipping would be more expensive.
Right.
Because then I would have to like ship them individually.
Yeah. But that's a good point. I'm wondering just because of it's, you know, the comic creator world where it's there's so many people, but it's also such a small world itself. I'm just wondering would that make sense to like connect with some, like, you know, a printer through an American peer, and then vice versa, they would connect with you through maybe a printing place, you know, in the European Union or Italy to have it be, hey, when I do my campaign, can I, you know, you print it for me and then I can print whatever you need from on my side or something.
That could work, but the only issue that I would have with that is that if I have my stuff printed in the US, I can't proofread it.
Right.
And like, which is like something that for me is very important because like there's also like different formats. Like in the US, the standard format is different than the standard formats in Europe.
Yeah.
So like if I send them the files that I have, they might like cut off pieces, or maybe the page itself will be like too small with like a lot of white space around it, and it might not quite fit. And if it's printed over there, then I wouldn't be able to proofread it, which is why printing it here and then sending like one big box over there is cheaper a bit and more trustworthy. But also I have an amazing printing company that is surprisingly cheap, but don't tell them they're cheap because they might raise their prices. They're cheap. They're very cheap, and they're and fast, and they do really good quality work. Like when I was comparing printing prices with many of my comic creator friends, like they tell me stuff like, oh, I spent like 10 euros a volume printing my comic, and I'm like, what? Dude, that's it's retail price. Why are you getting it printed for that kind of price? Like my printer does the same job, even better, for like €2 a volume or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they're in the chat and they said they're going to raise their prices. No, I'm kidding. So that was the reason why you went from Indiegogo to Kickstarter, and why you and why you're sticking with Kickstarter right now. So my next question for you too is, like, from volume 1 to volume 2, is what was the decision on your part to decide to go from grayscale to color?
Well, volume 1, there was a lot of experimenting that I did at the beginning of volume 1. And so there's a big slice of volume 1 that is entirely in black and white, or, like with gray, pretty much, to like give it some scaling. And it wasn't until like almost halfway through volume 1 that I actually started creating the pages in color. And so printing volume 1 half and half would have been crazy expensive because it would technically count as color. And going back and coloring like the first 120, 130 pages would have been crazy amount of work. Also, considering that my art itself improved a lot. It's like even in volume 1 itself, like just to give an example, this is the beginning of volume 1.
Right.
And this is near the end of volume 1. Like there is considerable growth, and coloring pages that are kind of subpar compared to what the current level is like super frustrating. Like, And so because of the cost and because of all those other reasons, I decided to do volume 1 in grayscale. But volume 2, I decided to do it shorter than volume 1, because that way I would also be able to like maintain costs, like manageable, but still print something that is like a lot better. So because of like the art scale improvement and because of the color, volume 1's quality is compared to volume 1.
Right. And so do you have do you have, is this a fixed story, or is this going to be an ongoing series? Like, do you say, all right, I'm just going to do 5 volumes, we're going to do 10 volumes, or do you have like an entire story arc in mind that you're going to say, all right, this is the end? I
did, but then I keep having ideas for new story arcs that I keep planting in, which are like pretty good because they like help with the characters' development, and it helps make the characters' relationships more interesting, and it helps make the world building more consistent and more interesting. So I keep adding arcs here and there, which does start to give it a more like a series with several arcs feel. But it will have an ending. Like currently, I don't think it will have more than maybe 3 seasons.
Okay.
But I might be wrong. We'll see when the time comes.
And do you have? Is it always good? Is it follow Ivy, or is it gonna branch off into different protagonists?
Well, Ivy is the protagonist of this series. I may have small spin-offs, maybe focusing on other characters, or even like other aspects, maybe even in the same world. Like I did have once a little 10-page one-shot that is set like in the same world, in which there was a woman who like feeds a cat in an alley, and then she goes and minds her own business, goes to work, and on her way back from work she is mugged, but the cat turns into like half human and like claws the guy's face, and then the woman brings the cat home to show her gratitude, and then they live happily ever after. Pretty much like well, it was like a cute little 10-page one shot that I was working on mostly to like take a break from the comic occasionally and work on something else. It's not finished. I do like have all the storyboards done and a couple of pages done, but it's mostly like a side project, like when I want to take a breather.
Right. That's awesome. So we're getting close to the hour already, Nita. So Yeah, it was quick. So, if people want to, and I want to also plug your Patreon
Mm-hmm.
page. What can people expect if they're curious about supporting you? What would be some of the perks they would get on the Patreon?
Well, most of my patrons are $15 pledges, so they're Phoenix patrons.
Oh wow!
And that's because all my patrons from $10 up receive monthly commissions with their pledge.
Oh wow!
And so, because I'm very busy with comic and work, my commissions are closed most of the time. But they're always open through Patreon. And because, it's like small morsels, it's more manageable for me and more financially manageable for them. So
Okay,
like in a handful of months, they're able to get like a fully rendered, beautiful illustration. But because they're only spending like $15 a month, it's not like eating into their bank account. And also for me, because I'm only doing $15 worth a month,
right.
then it's like not this overwhelming commission that I have to work on. And also because of this perk, most of my patrons haven't even read my comic. They just do it because I'm kind of well known in the Monster Girl art community.
Right.
And so I've got a handful, like a whole bunch of like different illustrations, with like harpies or like snake girls, slime girls, stuff like that. And people like those. And so they back my patron to get like their own.
You get their own character design.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good, yeah. That is very economical on their
Mm-hmm.
part too. Yeah. Wow. And then also too, the other good spot people, because your link tree kind of has,
It's got everything.
it's got
Pretty
everything right
much.
there. Yeah. Yeah. That you're on there. And so when your Twitch, are you just
Mm-hmm.
doing live stream drawing, or are you playing video games on that, or what are you doing?
Mostly drawing,
Okay.
because I do play video games sometimes, but it's mostly playing Fortnite on the PlayStation. But like, I don't really want to stream that because when I do play video games, I normally don't play more than 20 minutes at a time because it's
Right.
mostly something that I do to de-stress and not something that I do for like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 hours at a time. But
Right.
drawing, yes. So I
Yeah.
mostly stream art.
Okay.
And I've been streaming lately almost every day, unless I have shows and interviews and promotional stuff to do. And I've also been using Twitch as like a medium to show art and promote both my comic and the Patreon and everything. And I've only started this month, and it's doing pretty okay so far.
Oh, good. All right. And you got your Facebook page, like I say, so in the show notes for those that are listening to this or those that are going to be watching this, we will put Nina's link tree in the show notes and in the description too. So great. Well, thank you so much, Nina. And like I said, congratulations again on hitting your
Thank you.
goal, and come back on when volume 3 is ready to go.
Yeah, I'll definitely hit you up.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And that's your is that, would you consider that a crown, or what would you call it?
It's a flower crown, I
It's a
guess.
flower crown. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. It's very sunrise blossom-esque, right?
It is. It is.